Asmongold broke out the potato cam. I clicked on it. I heard him go, let's talk about where wokeness comes from. I paused it and I thought, stream. Let's do it.
Hi, today I want to talk to you all about wokeness and where I think it came from. So a lot of people don't.
Where it came from, and here's the thing. Y'all know, I like Asmongold. I do. I think Asmongold's a good dude. I think he's going to be wrong about this. I do not think Asmongold has been ingratiated in the culture war long enough to actually know the long and storied history behind it. Now, I do think he was probably going to come to a lot of the correct conclusions about like the effects of wokeness and whatnot. But here's the dealio. Wokeness came from a convergence of communist and post-Marxist ideologies that wormed its way into the educational system in roughly the 80s, give or take. You can even maybe track it back to the 60s, but definitely the 80s. And slowly but surely, they gained institutional power. And as they gained that institutional power, they kept brainwashing more and more generations of students coming to these universities and then putting them out there into other places of institutional power, be it politics, be it writing rooms, be it control over businesses, whatever it may be, to the point where you have this ideology that has been in the works for the long game to take over the world and force the world, at least the first world, to capitulate to the same one world globalist ideology. That is where it came from. And there's a lot of people in control, and there's even more, far more useful idiots that don't know this. But let's see what Asmongold has to say.
Don't really understand how all these things came together and how we experience probably the highest and the biggest level of censorship that at least I've experienced in my lifetime between the years of, I would say, 2014 and 2024. Now, what I find to be the most ironic about this is that the main thesis of what I'm going to be talking about is the way that you created the unholy matrimony, the unholy trinity between ideologically captured media, bad faith capitalism, and mentally ill activism.
Okay. To be fair, I would say that is an unholy trinity. It hasn't really touched on the academic aspect yet, but you know what? That would be the unholy trinity. I will give him credit there.
And these things put together all created an apparatus that I want to construct and then deconstruct and talk to you all about how it actually maintained power and how it manifested and projected that power throughout the entire internet. So fundamentally, what I find to be the most ironic about all of this is that the main people that are the biggest social justice warriors, the biggest woke people, the people that care so much about all of these different issues, almost every single one of them hate capitalism. But in an ironic sense, none of their ideology would have ever been tolerated by anybody if capitalism wasn't there that was insulating it from criticism.
Correct. Well, okay, sort of correct. No, it would have never been tolerated or perpetuated in the West, specifically in America, because these are Marxist ideas. These ideologies did, in fact, come out of communist regimes, or at least attempted communist regimes, for many, many years. That being said, we all see how communism ends. We can just open a fucking history book. But yes, these ideas and ideologies never would have been tolerated if it were not in America and other Western, other first world Western countries. If there was not some sort of capitalist market that could ironically exploit them.
And I want to talk about why that happened. So we're going to go back. We're going to go way back to 2010 to 2014. It depends on how you want to define it. But
you know what? I think that's a good place to start. Obviously, it started before that. We've talked about it on here. It started in the 80s, 60s. Some you can take back to the 50s, 40s, 30s. But let's just say the true origin point for it maintaining or for it gaining institutional power in the West, let's say, is the 80s. 2010 to 2014 is a good starting point because that's when you've got Occupy Wall Street and Gamergate, which were flashpoint moments for these ideas becoming mainstream outside of the institutional bubble. So I think that actually is a good starting point.
That's where I would really start the beginning. So that's whenever you started seeing terms of service on websites. That's whenever you started seeing words that you couldn't say. That's whenever, instead of telling people, if you don't like it, don't look at it, instead of that, you decided to instead tell people, if you don't like it, then nobody can look at it. Why did these things change? What happened? Why was it that a place like Reddit, for example, that was the open bastion of free speech, suddenly changed?
And that's true. Bro, in 2026, we shit on Reddit, right? Reddit is commie central. They put red in the name. A lot of folk don't realize that is not the case. Reddit used to be just like 4chan in terms of its sheer unhinged just buffoonery. Reddit really was the free speech bastion of the internet. The entire concept of Reddit was founded around the idea of zero moderation, for one, no moderation, people just democratically voting on what they did and didn't want to see. You on the front page of Reddit, it's because you earned it. People read your shit, gave it the little upvotes, whatever. Like, the idea of Reddit was the true democratization of what people wanted to see on the internet. And yes, that is not fair. Reddit says I'm a bigot. Yeah, Reddit does in fact say I'm on lists on Reddit. I'm on lists of anti-woke grifter channels not to watch on Reddit. It's fucking hilarious. Like Reddit don't like me. Reddit don't like Hypno. Reddit don't like Asmongold. Reddit don't like Nerdrotic. The list goes on and fucking on. But yes, needless to say, Reddit as it is now is a complete twisted evil inversion of what it used to be, to the point where like the original founders and CEOs of Reddit went against the US government in their anti-censorship crusades. Like, the government tried to censor Reddit on multiple instances, and Reddit fought back and won.
And then allowed itself to be completely colonized by a small manufactured minority of people and a manufactured consensus of ideas.
And governments. And government operatives, by the way. Like, he is correct about it being a consensus of minority ideas. A lot of this are government operatives. A lot of what made Reddit change, and you could verifiably confirm this. In fact, this might make for a good tinfoil haters episode, depending on it. There's a full episode's worth there. Is the psyop that is the government infiltrating Reddit and becoming lead moderators. You've got several people in the CIA, FBI, whatnot, that have become lead moderators all over Reddit. That way they can use that as a way to propagate their communist Marxist ideas.
That is really not representative of their user base or really of anybody in real life either. How did this happen? And I'll tell you exactly how it happened. It's actually very simple. It happened because of money. So what happened between 2010 and 2014? You started getting a lot of ads. You started getting a lot of advertisements. You started getting a lot of, ways that these companies and these websites were basically making money. And if you look at this on the stock market for any of these different companies, this is very clearly the growth period of their business. This is whenever they started really making a lot of money, because a lot of people falsely attribute the woke era to something that was happening during COVID, which I think was the fever pitch, but it wasn't the entire disease.
It's correct.
The disease actually started between 2010 and 2014, and it was manifested by advertising and then companies wanting to make.
So was people posting CP and Reddit on 4chan as psyop? Yes, probably a bit of both, honestly. Probably a bit of both. People posting CP and CP on Reddit and 4chan was a mix of government psyop and just sick fuckers out there abusing the lack of moderation.
Maintain that advertising money in order to maintain the to maintain the advertisements to continue making more money. So what happened is that you had these activists and people that are working inside of media companies, and then the media companies are running smear campaigns. They're talking about how, this website is allowing, racism or dangerous language or X or Y thing. And we're not even talking about the COVID era, by the way. Keep this in mind. This is back in the,
Yeah, again, this is Gamergate and pre-Gamergate. I don't know how big of my audience is, like, in terms of those of you guys that were around for the OG Gamergate. I say it all the time. I was. Like, OG Gamergate is the reason I am here. This is the reason I'm on YouTube. So for anybody that remembers, just we the OGs. I feel you.
Gamergate, even
I'm old, Yusuke.
Pre-Gamergate era, this is when these things were happening. So what really was going on is that they kept making articles and they kept saying that, like, oh, this website is allowing X, Y, and Z content, and it's horrible that this is happening. Then there was a harassment and a advocacy campaign that pushed the advertisers that were advertising on the website, that was basically egged on by these ideologically captured media apparatuses and individuals too, to put
now only half ideologically captured. Only half. Yes, there's ideological capture for sure, but those are the useful idiots. The other half, financially captured. You got BlackRock and you got the state and whatnot coming in, giving a lot of money, saying, we want things ran this way because this will further our agenda. What you call it, World Economic Forum, call it New World Order, call it Illuminati, whatever you want. That was a key factor. So you had the money and you had the useful idiots, and there's obviously a Venn diagram of the two.
pressure on these companies, because companies, you have to admit, you have to understand, I mean, are they're not moral, they're not immoral, they're amoral. If Hitler won World War II, most of these companies would be selling swastikas. And
Correct.
it's important to always remember that. When a company thinks that your social cause or your social opinion is the correct social opinion, the odds are it's because they think they can make money off of it.
That is why we have Pride Month. Pride Month is not out there so the dudes that fuck assholes can sit there and be proud and scream from the rooftops that they love putting their dicks in assholes. That is not what Pride Month is for. Pride Month is for the gay for pay corporatists. That's what it is. It's so that fucking Target can get out there and try and make a bunch of money off the fad that is homoeroticism. Lo and behold, turns out normal folk don't like that too terribly much, especially when you start getting kids involved. But they thought they made money off it, and for a long time they were. So,
you, if they tell you that. That's the only reason. Why do you think they all care about Pride? Well, it's because they can sell something with a rainbow on it. So anyway, these companies care about money. And so what happened is that the media apparatus created and manufactured a false consensus that everybody was upset and angry about these types of behaviors, right? Everybody was upset about this. People were super mad. And now these companies have to take action. They have to do something. They have to act. And this is what's happening also, by the way, it happened inside of mainstream media as well. You saw different shows that were, pushing ideologies that were not necessarily what people accepted in terms of, culturally acceptable. And
you got Tucker Carlson getting fired from Fox News. His number one, and by the way, this is not a defense of Tucker Carlson. Y'all know I don't like me no Tucker Carlson, but you also got to admit, 10 years ago, or whenever it was he was fired from Fox, probably not 10 years ago. It was probably like closer to 6 or so. But the point is, dude is on Fox News, the number one controlled opposition for the libs. And I do say controlled opposition because Fox News was just that, controlled opposition. He goes on Fox News, starts saying, yeah, it was definitely the CIA that murdered JFK. Oh, you can't have that information floating around. So needless to say, they are completely, it's funny because Tucker Carlson was in fact cut by Fox News.
I think that really, if you take a step back, think about the term brand friendly. Think about that term, brand friendly.
Shout out, Tato,
what
man.
does brand friendly almost always mean? That means at least something that is either agnostic to politics or leftist leaning. And I think that really kind of gives away the game, doesn't it? Because fundamentally, every single one of these companies always kowtows to this group of people. Now, why did they do that? Is it because they're the majority? Well, if Donald Trump won the election, it seems like that's not the case. So why actually do they get listened to?
It's almost like he's saying what I say in just about every single political stream. Donald Trump won the election by a wide fucking margin, by the way. Clearly, this is not the majority consensus, as in this leftist ideology is not the majority consensus. And if it's not the majority consensus, then there's no way to make money off it. If there's no way to make money off of it, then there's got to be something else. There's got to be some other reason that they are doing this.
It's actually extremely simple. It's because these people are very good at institutional capture, and they've done an incredibly good job at it, whether it's businesses, whether it's HR departments, whether it's media companies, or whether it's other forms of NGOs.
Whether and he left off the big one. And this is how I knew I was going to disagree with Asmongold on this. Well, not disagree, but be kind of disappointed because he left out the big one. Academia. This all starts with academia. Even before the NGOs, even before the governments, even before the businesses and the crony capitalism, it all starts with academia.
Or just different media apparatuses that are third party that exist on the internet, or even individuals that are just politically minded that want to advocate for something. And I think that they're very strategic and they're very effective, and they have been. And it took a long time for people to identify this and then begin to.
And 13 Dragons is correct. The number one things humans go to war for is religion. And when you have got secular individuals whose entire religion is bowing and kowtowing to the state, this ideology that is state-sponsored becomes their religion. This ideology becomes their religion. And that is why they are willing to go to war and call you a Nazi and call you a bigot and call you a racist and more than that, call you a fucking rapist and a pedophile. All these abhorrent things, calling your job, getting you fired, all that. This to them is war over their religion, their secular religion to the state.
countermeasures like what we have now. So anyway, all of these people have basically created this entire permission structure around language. And the permission structure around language enabled people to accept that certain things were just simply not allowed to be said. And this manufactured the ideology of being brand friendly. This could not have happened without mainstream big companies enforcing this.
Honestly, the big one's not the Jews. And here's, like, don't get me wrong, I'm anti-Israel as they come, son. I'm anti-Israel as they come. But this actually predates that. The whole commie Marxist ideology was actually not an invention of the Jews. Now I'm not saying that like the state of Israel or that there aren't like Ashkenazi Jews that have a lot of power and whatnot that are not also in the club. But these are actually Western European ideologies from people who have no concept of how economics really work, then where all this started.
This ideology by the rule of money. If there was no money involved in any of these companies, then none of these companies would have changed. You used to be able to say the N-word on Twitch. You used to be able to say the F-word on Twitch. Do you want to know what changed? Advertisers changed. What do you think the probability is that every single company suddenly grew a conscience and wanted to make all of these different slurs against the rules at, ironically, the same time that they all got a bunch of money for advertising? What do you think the odds of that are? Well, I'd say what the odds are. It's zero. They're doing it for the advertising money. That's always what they were doing it for.
Coca-Cola never gave a fuck if you called someone a faggot, right? Coca-Cola was never like, oh, shit. Asmongold said faggot on Twitch, and now no one's going to buy Coca-Cola anymore. No, that is not how they are, because they didn't fucking care. It's also not real. Just like how it's not real that payment processors are going to should be blocking payments because, oh, Visa, MasterCard, we don't want to be associated with porn. These porn games that are on Steam, we can't be associated with that. People are going to stop using Visa or MasterCard. Really? Because last I checked, you could use your Visa and MasterCard to pay for Playboy the entirety of my life and surely my dad and granddaddy's life. So needless to say, it's not as if they actually gave a fuck. No one was like, oh, I'm canceling my Visa, my MasterCard because you can use it to buy Playboy. That's never fucking happened.
So why is it that these companies are listening to these people? Well, this is the two-part thing of identity capture and just basically capture in general. So you have the media companies that have been taken over by these people who want to weaponize the media companies' influence in order to push their ideology. This is relatively obvious. I think that we all know this is what happens. But then the second thing is that people that work inside of the actual companies themselves also have some of these ideologies, and they create
the people that work in these companies now were indoctrinated into these ideologies. Because you got to remember, let's say this became mainstream in academia in the 80s. Now, I get it. People always correct me. Leon, it was the 60s. It was the 40s. Yeah, fuck it. Mainstream in academia. We're going to say that mainstream in academia was the 80s. Guys, the 80s is almost 50 fucking years ago at this point. Like the 80s was like 1980 was almost 50 years ago at this point. The people that are in control in these positions now are post 80s mainstream academia, neo-Marxist indoctrination. They actually do believe this shit. They didn't think they were being indoctrinated when they were going to Stanford or going to Princeton or anything like that, but they were. And they came out holding these ideologies as things they actually believe. Now, of course, there are people above them, people that have actually been trying to spread this that know it's all bullshit, and they're just using it as a control apparatus. But the people that came out of these institutions, they actually believe it because they've been indoctrinated for the last 40 to 50 years to think this is the way the world should work.
Alarmism around not making these people happy. Now, I think that you've started to realize that usually whenever these people are upset, it's not a boycott, it's a goycott. Nobody cares, it doesn't matter, and everybody that's angry and upset about it, there's really no effect that really has. So if you upset these people, you saw this with how many video games where it's like, okay, well, we're gonna own the chuds, and then nobody owns the game. And so that's really not a good way Not a good way to keep your job, is it? Sure seems that way. Look at Bungie. So anyway, what happens is that people inside of, HR departments and other types of administrative and influential positions at these companies use those positions in order to manufacture alarmism around the manufactured consensus. And I apologize, I'm using these words all the time, but I just want to make sure that I make it completely clear that none of this was organic.
This is completely irrelevant. The latter ones believe the latter ones believe this. The newer ones, I think you mean the older, not the latter, because the latter would be the newer generations. But it doesn't matter. The newer generations are not the ones in control. The new generation, because you're right. There's a new generation that is becoming more, I don't know, radicals. I mean, some of them are absolutely, but at least becoming more like right wing, moving away from this ideology. But they're young. They're not in control, so that's irrelevant.
And none of this was done because people wanted it. Nobody actually wanted any of this. This was forced on people, and it was done so by the unholy matrimony between mentally ill advertisers, there's that too, mentally ill activists and cynical advertisers that are trying to cater to the lowest common denominator of capitalism, and failing massively, by the way. You can see that with Bud Light. So anyway, all of this has happened. These companies now are then taking away partnerships, they're taking away advertising, and they're changing the ways that they want their their stuff broadcast and their stuff advertised. And that causes these companies to create a culture around basically playing it safe. They don't want to take any risks. They want to make sure that nobody does anything wrong. And they also don't want to attract the negative attention to.
The left is at least consistent with their moral relativism and their death cult ideology. The right pretends to have morals, but never did. Well, I think, first of all, left and right is the incorrect way to frame this. Because I more or less agree with what you're saying, but you're framing it incorrectly. Because you're using the left and right as catch-all terms when there's multiple subsects within the right. The left is consistent. The right is not, because the right has multiple different subsects. To be fair, the left does as well, but because they eat their own far more and they excise those that are not consistent, those people end up finding themselves in the center, on the right, disaffected liberals, whatever. So really what you're trying to say is liberals and conservatives. And now I agree that that conservatives are morally inconsistent, and that's because anyone that's not a liberal is by default conservative these days, which obviously is not true. To be a conservative requires, well, one of two things. You got to be a fiscal / governmental conservative, or you can be a moral conservative, which you go by Christ-like ideologies, things of that effect. Whereas fiscal and government style conservatives are just about small government. The rules and whatnot don't really matter as long as the government's small. So, but again, I get what you're saying. It's just there's more to it than just using left and right.
The media class and to the activist class, because if you attract negative attention from them by not doing what they want, then they manufacture.
This is not true. People are not inherently moral relativists. No, if you adhere to any sort of religious ideology, then you are not a moral relativist because you believe in objective moral values. So this is flat out wrong.
Conspiracies, they try to create negative sentiment about you, and then they call you, nowadays, right? How many people are being called a Nazi? It's like, oh yeah, I'm not seeing your point of view, I guess I'm a Nazi now, right? That's the way that the world works. And fundamentally, I think this was very effective. Now, anybody that plays Classic WoW knows that if you cast the crowd control on an opponent too many times, it begins to have what you would call diminishing returns. And I think at this point, it's basically just on the immunity stage. But for many, many years, this was an effective way of shutting down conversation. Sexist, racist, misogynist, Nazi, far right, etc. All of these terms were used as buzzwords in order to allow that media class to pressure the advertising and the business class, to pressure the social media class, to pressure everybody else to adhere to their ideology and their language. And that's exactly how it happened. And I think that let's talk about, and obviously this just kind of got worse and worse and worse and worse. And the reason why it got worse and worse and worse is actually something that's very much a parallel of what's happening with the Democratic Party right now. The Democratic Party is going through what I would say is basically a civil war. This is kind of similar to the Tea Party happening in the late 2000s and maybe the early 2010s in the Republican Party. But I would view this to be slightly different because it's much more existential. You had people that were not really involved in any of these things because they cared about them. They were involved in these things because it made them feel good. And this is something that's become
correct. Well, not only because it made them feel good, that is a part of it, but it made them feel like they were they had something they're fighting for. Humans crave strife. Humans need strife. Like, that's why working out is so good for you, because there is a resistance there. There's a physical resistance. You are putting strain on your body and your mind to do a thing that is difficult. That's the reason why, like, you feel accomplished after you clean your house, because you took the time and effort to do something difficult that had a good outcome. Anything that has a quote unquote good outcome should require some sort of work to do so. And like, when you've got an entire generation that grew up without seeing any real struggle, like, oh yes, I get it, we had like the war on terror and shit, but let's be real, the war on terror, look at how many people have died in that compared to like fucking World War II of Vietnam. It's not even close. We've grown up in the most comfortable situation imaginable, that we live in an era of just instant gratification. So people, specifically these, moral leftists and whatnot, that are trying to demoral fag over every right and wrong word and social ill and whatnot, is because they are craving strife that humans crave, and they will not do anything on the small scale, work out, clean their own room, whatever it may be. It's the old Jordan Peterson adage, to invite that livable strife within their life, to give themselves some sort of sense of accomplishment or whatnot. It's like, you need to introduce something difficult or multiple things difficult into your life to have that life be worth living. You can't do that on the macro scale and expect that you're just going to have the same sense of satisfaction. It doesn't work. You need to start with the micro and then work up to the macro if you actually do believe in it.
More and more obvious is that many of these companies and many of these people are not really adopting these social causes out of any sort of like real genuine intention or real genuine care. They're adopting social causes as social accessories. They're using their pride flags, their Palestine flags, and their trans flags, or like their coexist bumper stickers. They're not using these as actual pieces of advocacy. They're using them as social accessories so they can signal to other people that they're a good person.
True.
So what the point of that is that there actually is no real kind of end goal. There's no ideology, that there's no light at the end of this tunnel. There's no North Star that these people are working towards. And that's the reason why the ideology continues to self-radicalize. It's because it was never about ever doing something and achieving something and meeting a goal. It was manufacturing consent, enforcing that consent and that permission structure on the entire population, and then feeling like a good person for doing it. And that's the most important thing. It's not because of the people. It's not.
And that's why you have these dumb white blonde bitches after Zoran Mamdani gets elected. Yes, a communist Muslim, because both of those groups are so well known for their great treatment of women, talking about excitedly how they can't wait for Sharia law to be introduced in New York, because they don't understand a goddamn thing. It just makes them feel good in their inside feely parts.
Because of the people they're trying to help. It's because the main person they want to help is themselves, and they want to help themselves feel better. And that's the reason why it's become more and more radical. And I think that it was generally tolerable in 2014 to 2019.
It was not. It was not tolerable. You just didn't know how bad it was. I'll be real. I do not think Asmongold knew how bad it was. Most people didn't. Unless you were terminally online, unless you were on 4chan, unless you were on, in those Gamergate forums and whatnot, like where all this really came to a head, unless you were actually involved in that and saw what was happening, it wasn't tolerable. You just didn't know it was there to realize you shouldn't be tolerating it.
COVID really sent it into a, pun intended, a fever pitch, right? And it really got a lot worse. And the reason why I think it got a lot worse is actually very simply because you had everybody staying inside, companies are spending infinitely more money, and I think obviously you had social unrest and everything else. And what happened is that these people just continued to self-radicalize, and because so many people were being involved and basically swept up in the movement, it accelerated the progression of the movement to the point where you couldn't even say that there were two genders anymore. And I think this happened. The reason why it stopped actually wasn't that people got tired of it.
I could be wrong, and maybe I'm misremembering. I don't think Asmongold rooted for Zoran Mamdani. I think he acknowledged the truth about Zoran Mamdani, which is he was a great leader in the way that he is great at rallying support, getting support, telling people what they want to hear. Now let's be real. It was absolutely artificial. He came out of nowhere, no funding, no one knows who he is. It's basically Obama 2.0. But just like Obama 2.0, they found a useful idiot who is a populist, who is great at speaking to the people, telling them what they want to hear. And Asmongold acknowledged all those positive things, at least positive in terms of the eye of the media about Zoran Mamdani, and he was correct about that. Now, whether he's what he said, he liked him, he liked Zoran because he said the right things and didn't know anything about. And again, that is true. To be fair, Zoran did say the right things. Now, again, that doesn't mean he was good in any way, shape, or form. But liking the way someone speaks and liking their actual policies and stuff. Now, again, I don't actually know what I don't recall what Asman said about Zoran in terms of policies, but everything he said about Zoran Mamdani, I would say about Obama. Obama was the worst president in our American history, and maybe Jimmy Carter. Point is, Obama is in the top 5 list of worst presidents we've ever had. I'm also not going to sit here and pretend Obama was not a great speaker who was able to capture the hearts and minds of the people because of his speaking ability, despite the fact that every single policy and plan he had for this country was objectively dog shit. And yeah, Vagabond is correct. Hitler, incredible speaker. Hitler was an incredible speaker.
Of it. It's because one person got tired of it, and that person was Elon Musk. I do think that it was a timeline shift when Elon Musk bought Twitter. I think that if Elon Musk had not bought Twitter, we would probably still be living with the COVID era censorship, and it would probably be continuing to get worse and worse and worse because those people still controlled all the levers of power. They may be stupid, they may be delusional, they may be selfish, but they are.
I'll agree to this. Obama second, Carter first. Yeah, Carter was probably the absolute worst, but Obama's top 5, maybe even number 2.
Organized, and they also do have a decent understanding of political theory and at least institutional capture to the extent that they can apply it and use it to their advantage. And I think that's commendable. I just wish they would do it to something that wasn't destructive. So the point that I'm making is that COVID, I think, accelerated all of it. Elon Musk buying Twitter was like a crack in the dam that unlocked basically everybody's freedom of speech. And you went from not being able to say that there were 2 genders to only talking about which race is the best race. And that's a really big change.
Now, as far as which race is the best race, I mean, guys, I think we all know the answer to that. Yeah, white people. Am I right? Obviously, we know the best race.
The Overton window didn't shift, the entire building got bulldozed, and you built it somewhere else. So in the entire world, I think this was probably the biggest, or internet world, this was the biggest shift in terms of, like ideology, in terms of behavior and everything, is when Elon Musk ended up buying Twitter. So he buys Twitter, everybody can say whatever they want. And then also at that point, Elon said, well, I don't need advertising. And that's the reason why Twitter, I think, has freedom of speech.
Well, unfortunately, Twitter did need advertising because they were already in massive debt when Elon bought them. And he bought them at a loss. He bought them for more than their debt was even worth, which is crazy. But it was necessary for for free speech to function and to be able to get out there, for it to be the public square and have people not be censored and whatnot. It did need advertising to get itself out of the red. However, the lack of advertising and what Twitter and now X, because I don't call it Twitter, it's fucking X, stands for, is more important than making money. And it's funny because that's such a fucking like commie bullshit thing to say. Oh, so and so is more important than making money. And normally I just trounce all over that ideology. But when X is the only place on the internet where you can speak freely as anyone that is not to the left of Bernie Sanders, then yeah, at some point it is less about whether or not there's money involved. And I hate that that's true.
The more that these companies allow advertising, the less freedom of speech that they will be allowed. And you could say that that's fair because companies don't want to deal with this kind of stuff and they want to be amoral. I understand that, but I think that we should also acknowledge that the genesis of all of this censorship is not simply social justice. It's actually just making money. And if it wasn't for capitalism...
So Future, they actually tried several conservative versions of Blue Sky. They had Gab, they had what was the other one called? I'm trying to remember the name of it. There was 2 or 3 of them, and they all got shut down, either not allowed on the Apple Store, or they ended up having to soft censor and bow and kowtow to advertisers, and basically the whole thing that made them quote unquote conservative went away. Parler, Parler was the one I was thinking of. Yeah, so you had Gab, you had Parler, none of Truth Social was never going to go anywhere anyway, because that was literally just Facebook, but for MAGA people. So that one was doomed regardless. But yeah, both Gab and Parler. Gab was never even allowed in the App Store. Parler wasn't allowed on the Apple App Store, and then only eventually got allowed after they basically cut themselves and said, yeah, we'll basically be the same as OG Twitter, which at that point defeats the entire purpose. So no, because the companies that control what apps you can put on the App Store, Apple and Android and whatnot, didn't allow the conservative alternatives to Twitter.
Still have people spamming the N-word all the time. And how do I know that? Well, it's because every single website that isn't run based off of advertising and doesn't, depend on it, like 4chan, Twitter or Rumble, for example, all of these places have people saying all kinds of crazy.
I want to make sure I give props to whoever rated us. Hey, shout out King Alucard for the raid. Appreciate you. Appreciate the raid, King Alucard. Now you have Rumble. And Rumble's a little bit different. Rumble's not the same as Gab and Parler because it's a video site as opposed to like true social media, but I get what you're saying.
Things. So the moment that you give people a mask, they'll show you their true face. And I think that's also the reason why they want to use ways to identify people. This is why doxing is so effective. Doxing is also another effective way of doing things. And the reason why doxing is so effective is because doxing allows people to apply those consequences that they would previously apply to companies, to social media websites, which was a lot harder for them to do. Now all they have to do is achieve it with one individual person. And you see this also, the reversal of this with, for example, Charlie Kirk. You see people talking about like, oh, I'm glad Charlie Kirk died. And
they did a little bit more than dox Charlie Kirk, but I get what he means.
Then they get fired from their job, and these people were saying like, well, this isn't fair. I don't agree with this. Well, that's too bad. You shouldn't have been doing it for the last 10 years.
Oh, okay. I misunderstood what he's saying. He's saying that now the right wing, the right side of the aisle is using the leftist tactics like they did with Charlie Kirk. And you know what? I'm fine with that. I'm fine with that. I am. I used to be diehard against it, being like, nah, we can't do what they do. We're supposed to be, nah, fuck that. This is war. Y'all did this shit. And frankly, there's a difference between saying like, yo, maybe don't cut the cock off a 12-year-old Timmy and get fired for that versus actively cheering for the death of an American citizen who's just out there practicing his free speech. One of those to me, far more valid as a fireable offense, because if you've got a dude in the office who's out there advocating for the death of people, that's the sort of dude that's going to be showing up to your work in a trench coat with an AR-15 after he snaps because his Reese's Cups couldn't come out the vending machine properly. I don't want that dude in my place of fucking work. So yeah, someone out there advocating for the death of Charlie Kirk or anyone else, fire the motherfucker. Someone out there saying, don't harm kids. Maybe the boy can't be a girl. Maybe, hey, he's 6 years old and thinks he's a fucking toaster, so maybe don't trust him when he says he's a girl. That is a far more defensible position than cheering for the murder of a citizen who's just practicing their right to free speech.
So really what I think has happened is that now you have an environment where freedom of speech is more or less completely tolerated. And on top of it being completely tolerated, you have a shifting of the window of what is acceptable thought, the Overton window, that is happening faster and faster and faster. I think there's a force multiplier with this. And fundamentally, I wanted to let everybody understand and help everybody understand how these media companies and these activists are pressuring these companies to pressure other companies, news websites, social media websites, and everything else in between.
I gotta address this comment because you're wrong. You say we're forced to work for demonic companies. No, we're not. The companies are not demonic. This is me defending them. Being demonic is evil. Like a demon is unbridled evil. These companies are not evil. It is the banality of evil. They are not doing anything to stop said evil. Now, you can say that makes them, of course, evil by association, hence the banality of evil. But they are not actually demonic. They are just a company doing, going where they think the money is to maximize profits and whatnot, which, hey, that's how capitalism works. So it's not the companies that are demonic. The companies are not doing anything to stop the demonic machinations of these institutions, though, and of these people that run said institutions, of the World Economic Forum, and of the New World Order and things to that effect,
into making it to where you're not able to have freedom of speech. That is the main reason why it's happening. You're not losing your freedom of speech because of activists directly. You're losing it because of advertisers directly and activists indirectly that are working through, as a tertiary source, actually the media apparatus that they have ideologically captured. Whether this is video games journalism, whether it's real journalism, whether it's...
Anyone else think it's kind of funny that he separates video game journalism from quote unquote real journalism? I don't know if he meant that as a joke, but that was fucking funny. Okay, BlackRock is the exception to the rule. Yes, BlackRock is pretty fucking demonic. I'll give you that one. Anyway, that was fucking funny.
Unfortunately, basically any type of media that's mainstream to begin with. And you're starting to see this receding. And I think it's almost pretty much gone. I think that you're going to need probably 5 more years of cultural institutional change. And in terms of the varying...
Kieran, this is some real retarded black pill shit. I'm gonna be real. If you actually think like this, if you're this black pilled, why continue? Why go on? Why watch this stream? Why continue living? This is obviously bullshit, by the way. When you say jobs don't pay for basics and housing, yeah, the vast majority of them do. The vast majority of people's problems with the economy is not the fact the economy is failing or these jobs aren't paying enough or whatever. It's because people are bad with money. They took out massive amounts of student loans for super easy fucking photocopying jobs and stapling jobs that are irrelevant and will eventually be outsourced or automated or whatnot. People taking out loans, people making bad personal finance decisions. Like the vast majority of people's financial issues is not because job doesn't pay enough. It's because they are bad with money. Now, I'm not saying it doesn't exist. Obviously, there are 1,000% economic issues in this country, but a lot of it is self-inflicted.
Grained things like education, corporate environment, corporate policy, and let's not even get into the legal system in which these ideologies are codified into law. It will take a while to actually undo all of this, but we're very well on the path to that. And I wanted to show people kind of this cause and effect, because I think that a lot of people haven't really necessarily looked at it, and they're facing they're focusing their anger at these, I
don't know shit about minimum wage in Canada, but we actually talked about this. I think it was I threw this out on Saturday. I have notes on Saturday. Less than 2% of the American population, again, I don't know shit about Canada, less than 2% of the American population actually work for minimum wage. Less than 2% work minimum wage. 98% of America work above minimum wage. Now, to what degree? Obviously, that's going to vary. But the whole minimum wage isn't enough to sustain yourself or whatnot, I don't give a fuck about that argument because less than 2% of the population actually work for minimum wage.
Like weird social justice warriors on the internet. And I think that go ahead, be my guest, right? Do whatever you want to do. But those people are not fundamentally the ones that are making this happen. The ones that are fundamentally making it happen are the companies that are putting pressure on the websites, on the businesses, everything.
I'm talking federal minimum wage. Yes, Sebi, you're correct that they vary state by state, but there's a federal minimum wage. And I'm talking federal minimum wage.
To fulfill and conform to their ideology. And I do believe this is a situation that's kind of like nuclear weapons, for example. You cannot afford to not play the game. I think that if you want to control and you want to not have institutional capture, you have to engage in institutional capture.
Yes, correct. Correct, because you can go somewhere else. Chat roast this motherfucker. He's retarded. Said the West should fall. Fuck him. He's an idiot. He's retarded. The idea that you are owed this shit. No, there's a reason there's competition in the marketplace. You want to know what happened when a job I had didn't pay me enough or didn't pay what I thought it was worth or what I wanted or whatnot? I went to a different fucking job. I've never been jobless in my entire life for more than 2 months at a time. I've been working since I was 16. I'll be 32 this month or next month. And exactly a month, actually. My birthday's July 29th. It is June 29th. So I've been working for the last 16 years straight. Now, granted, I do this full time now. I've been doing this for about... Actually, it'll be a year this coming month doing this full time. But up until that, I've worked my entire life from 16 onward and never been without a job for more than maybe 2 months at a time. Opportunity to go wherever the fuck else you want is an insane, amazing freedom we have here in America that, frankly, there's a lot of commie countries don't have shit like that. You ain't gonna have what we have here in fucking North America. So, no, this is a retarded ideology. It's so easy to blow holes in.
a world where this weapon and this tool is not used. There's only a weapon where it's either you using it or it being used against you. And so my advocacy and my ask for everybody is that when you see people that are pushing for this kind of ideology, especially whenever they're doing it through vectors of commercial aspects, like, for example, advertising, you have to push back 10 times as hard.
Jobs only have the responsibility of the people that the people have to the job. Like Vagabond said, you sign agreements with these companies when you sign up. If you don't like what they are saying is their responsibility to you, then don't take that job. There is no moral fucking obligation for these companies to have a set of responsibilities to you. You can just go elsewhere. That's why it is a free market.
Because if these commercial places realize that these things are losing money, you're going to start seeing all of these people, their entire power structure completely evaporate. Because
you know that even Friedrich Nietzsche, the father of nihilism, disavowed nihilism, right? Oh, I'm nihilistic. Then you're an idiot because your entire worldview was disavowed by the individual that founded said worldview. You dumb motherfucker. You are not a nihilist. You're a pseudo-intellectual. The late plug of Muddy Waters, the 5-banger. Leon's right. I could be saving money for a light bill, but instead I'm sitting this super. People are irresponsible with money. Well done. That deserves a fucking clip.
Name one word that starts with G pronounced like J. Gentrification. Shoot, should have thought of that. I was just in San Francisco.
Fucking shout out. Thank you, Muddy Waters.
Power structure is actually maintained and enforced by capitalism. And it's not just by capitalism. I'm a big capitalism enjoyer, but I would say it is by bad faith.
Yeah, there we go. Go mine cobalt in Africa. Go mine cobalt in Africa.
Intelligent, uninformed capitalism that is being done by the lowest common denominator. And those are the people that you really should be looking at as your enemy. Those are your enemies, because those are the ones that are cutting the checks, that are forcing the ideologies, and they're doing it from the top down. And
no one knows the thing. No one knows about wasting money more than I do. I gifted a $100 game to a black friend only for him to forget I donated to him, and he's about to buy it again. Truly a waste indeed. Yo, I aspire to be this level of petty, bro. Like I was talking last night about how petty Clint Eastwood is because he refused to work with Coca-Cola because Coca-Cola did not because the people behind Karate Kid, which had a massive Coca-Cola sponsorship, refused to cast his son and cast Ralph Macchio instead. So Clint Eastwood vowed to never work with Coca-Cola ever in his life. I thought that was a level of petty. But then I see Hypno, bro. And I've known Hypno for like 3 years now. Hypno be one of the pettiest motherfuckers I've ever met. It is a thing of beauty.
yes, they're being influenced by the bottom, but it's the top that is making this decision. And it's these people that are fundamentally pulling the levers of power and changing things institutionally and making it to where you don't have a voice. And the reason why I want to make this video is that I think that a lot of times people don't really understand that. They don't see how these things have manifested, and they don't understand, they can't construct and deconstruct how all this has come together. I've been on the internet for 25 years. I've seen all of this happen myself. I'd be curious to hear what other people's comments are in the, in the comment section. But fundamentally, I think that we really do have to be more out.
I always find comments like this hilarious. Capitalism is fucking dead, and I don't know why anyone supports a viable path forward. A, give me a reason as to how it is dead, and B, give me a viable alternative. If you say it's not a viable path forward, then give me a viable alternative. Spoiler alert, there ain't one. Capitalism, all capitalism is a system of free market, where you, as the person providing a goods or service, gets to trade said good or service to somebody else at the discretion of both parties if they think that it is a valuable good or service. That is all it is. That is all capitalism is. Anything else that you would need to add to that is a function or a system of governments or whatnot that are manipulating said market and said economic ideology, not the economic ideology itself. And I good goddamn guarantee you, you don't have an answer for either of those things, at least not one that would actually work.
Spoken. I think that with video games, the last thing I want to talk about is that with video games, I think that we've done an incredibly great job. You have many of these different companies that are going back to McDonald's. They're going back to being Applebee's servers. And, no shade to any of the people that do those jobs, but fundamentally, they're simply not, much of a creative job as making a video game. And I really think that what you have to have happen is you have to have even more of these points on the graph in order to have companies be able to see that there's a very clear line. And I think that's
no, that's where Asmongold's wrong. The companies know there's a clear line. Again, these people that spend tens of, if not hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars in marketing, they're not stupid. They obviously know what the ideological normalcy is, at least amongst the American populace. Now, you could say it's different, for Europe or whatnot. It really isn't. They just, shut down the voices that are the dissenters, which are the majority, like what you see in the UK, what you see in France, things to that effect. Definitely what you see in Australia. Like, we are a vocal majority. But that vocal majority is suppressed by larger systems, and so it does not look like a vocal majority. That being said, if you look at specifically America, and let's be real, many of these companies are American, and they make the most amount of their money cumulatively in America. They know what the ideological sentiment is. They are being pressured and given reasons outside money, more important reasons than them outside money, to continue propagating this ideology.
Beginning to happen. If you look at, for example, a lot of the new video games, you see a lot less ideology that's being imposed into these video games. And I think that you're starting to see it with movies as well, especially whenever you have movie after movie that prioritizes identity politics, ideology, or some other form of message over actually appealing to their customers. And the best way that you can show people that that is a bad idea, there are two things. Number one, vote with your wallet. And number two, vote with your voice. Tell people the way that you feel, express yourself, and do it loudly. Because if you do it louder than other people, then people are going to listen to you. And
just yelling at people for a living. Correct. Because there's a market for it. Clearly, there's a market for it. Yelling at people for a living. That means there's a market for a myriad of things. If this was not viable, if this was not sustainable, I wouldn't be doing it. Assuming you're talking about me and or Asmongold or anybody that streams, for example. Because you may have had a comment there I missed. But I'm just going to take this as, oh, you're basically yelling at people for a living. Correct. Because clearly there's a market for it. There are people who are willing to pay for said service. That is capitalism. That's capitalism at its most beautiful. I am absolutely benefiting from the idea of capitalism. We've got people in chat right now who are like, you know what? I find value in what Leon and or Asmongold has to say. Here is money for that. Correct. If it was not a viable if it was not a viable job or whatnot, then there would not be a market for it. It's that simple.
This isn't a world where you can just abstain. This isn't a world where you can just say, well, I'm just simply not going to do that because I don't agree with that. If you don't do it, they'll do it to you. And that's my real, I want people to understand this. And I understand it might be a cynical pill to swallow. And I get that. I understand that. But I think that it's true. And if you don't think it's true, just wait and see, pay attention, listen, and just look around. And I think that you'll begin to realize that.
Why is something true or right without appealing to a subject? You're an idiot again. Objective moral values. Objective moral values, because there is a creator, because there is a deity, and there's an omnipotent being that created the system in which we live in. The fine tuning of the universe would be mathematically impossible if the what was it? The weight of gravity, if the effects of gravity were off by even a single degree, the idea of life in the entire known universe is literally impossible. If it were off by 1 degree, by the way, there's about 10 different categorizations of the fine tuning of the universe. I just gave you one. It is almost statistically impossible for there to not be a divine creator. And if there's a divine creator, that means there's a divine set of objective moral values. It would be whatever those moral values were that came from said creator that created the universe. It is very, very philosophically basic shit. Like that is stuff that you learn in Philosophy 101.
That's really the path forward. So I wanted to explain and talk about that. I hope you guys all watched and enjoyed it. And I'm curious to hear what people's comments are in the comment section below. So thanks all for watching. I'll see you tomorrow. Peace.
Good video from Asmongold. I was correct in the beginning when I said he is not going to go into the academic aspect of it. There's the link. Make sure to give it a like and whatnot. But yeah, he didn't go into the academic aspect. He didn't go into the history of it. Now, whether it's because it wasn't really necessary to the video or because he doesn't know, I'm not sure, nor does it really matter in the grand scheme of things. At the end of the day, yes, this system, it seems to be self-correcting, but at this point, it is a war. Well, maybe not self-correcting, actually forced into correction, but it is a war of attrition. What is going to happen first? The market corrects based on the whims of the people, or they cash out all their chips and go live a life of luxury while the rest of us starve because they are about to institute a one world government where we will live in the pods and eat the bugs and we will be happy. Shout out, thank you for the jewels, Draconic. I appreciate you. Which one of those comes first? I don't know, but I think that at this point they played their hand too fast, too loose, too quickly, and many people are waking up to it, have woke up to it, and you're going to basically see the system forced into self-correction. That doesn't mean they're just gonna the people in charge is gonna stop. There's a reason that the idea of DEI is more or less on the back burner. It's gone away. It's not actually gone. It's just being repurposed, repackaged as bridge. They're pushing it back out. They're biding their time. They're changing terms. That way they can re-roll this out again to try their plan again. But at the end of the day, there is self-correction, or again, I actually think it's more forced correction. Runaway Vagabond with a 5-banger. I had the free will to not give Leon this 5. No banker told me I could or couldn't do it. I just support because I like what Leon says. Shout out to Vagabond. I like what he says too. So make sure you guys go watch. I swear it's not hentai. His Sunday show. Mods, make sure you drop that in the link below. Shout out. Thank you so much.